Hey, what's going on, YouTubers? This is Zen Manga here, and I hope you're having a great day. So we are back with some reviews. So let's get right into it. So we have Power Rangers, Power Ranger story named Soul of the Dragon, right? And Soul of the Dragon is basically, if Tommy Oliver, he's aged up. I would say probably in his 40s or 50s, something like that of the nature. And he's retiring. So as we know, if you watch Dino Thunder or even read some of the comic books, that he's Dr. Oliver, right? He's become a doctor. But in this, the way this comic book starts is that he's going through his retirement phase, and he's married to someone. And some of us may have thought that he was going to be married to Kimberly, because she was the Pink Ranger. That was like his first love in terms of like Power Rangers. For a lot of us, that was our first love too. But he's married to Kat, and Kat was introduced, I think she was introduced into the regular Power Rangers and then transitioned into Turbo and then to Zeo and things of that nature. I know that she was, I think, a villain at first from Rita Repulsa. So anyway, the two are married and they're going home. They're kind of reminiscing about just old memories, and Tommy, just like many of us, kind of reminiscing on like past times and thinking, did I do enough? Could I have done more? And, Kat is basically saying to him that, you've done pretty much all you can do. So stop focus on what's going on or what you could have done, but focus on what you have done. And she's basically like, we saved the planet many times, right? So then panel shifts, and then we see Kat, she's leaving, and she basically says, I love you, and then he reciprocates and says, I love you too. She's going to Triforia, and Triforia, if you're not too sure, that's where the original Gold Ranger, his planet, came from. So she's going over there for kind of like a work trip or something of that nature. And when he gets out, he kind of sighs, and then he feels like a pinch in his back. So skipping the panel, he goes to the doctor. So the doctor, it's kind of like a technological, because this is kind of far in the future, right? So he's checking him out, and then he's like, what happened? So he says, he has a pinched nerve in his back, basically. So he lifts up the shirt, and then come to find out that he has some kind of augmentation, some mechanical augmentation on Tommy's back. And basically the doctor's like, how did you get that? He says a car crash, right? But then in reality, what really happens is that he faced off against some big beast back in the day, and it basically messed up his back and also his master morpher. Now his master morpher, I'm just going to explain this from now so it's not confusing a little bit later. So his master morpher has the contents of the coins and the crystals from all the previous versions of who he was. So such as the Green Ranger and the Zeo Ranger, the Turbo Ranger, all of the Rangers that he has represented throughout the years and that we've grown up with. He has the ability to use them. So it's messed up in the sense that he can't properly morph. So anyway, he gets it fixed, and then the doctor's like, come back in about a couple of weeks or a week, and then we're gonna see if we could give you a new augmentation for your back so that you don't go through this pain ever again. So he has back pain, right? And that's what it really is. It just seems like they're making it more technological speaking in the sense. But then we see Tommy go home, and he calls his son. His son's name is JJ Oliver, and he's calling him, and then he's basically saying like, we wished we had seen you at the retirement party, but he's like, I can't, I have to work a lot, I was going out, things of that nature. Come to find out that JJ, he works at SPD. If you're not familiar with that, SPD is basically Space Patrol Delta, which is basically Space Patrol, right? So they're, I would say, cops on a grand scale, not just on one planet, but on multiple planets to then hone peace throughout the whole entire galaxy, right? So he's part of that crew, he's part of that department, and then he says, I gotta go, right? So scene skips, right? I'm gonna kind of go a little bit faster here. Scene skips, and then JJ is then bombarded with a whole bunch of like gang members, right? Gang members from different alien races, things like that. And then basically they capture him. So then next, I would say a week later, right? I think it's about a week later in the comic book. A week later, we see Tommy, and he's basically getting into the car, things like that. And Anara, I think it's Anara, she comes out, and we're not too sure who this is yet, but she says, are you Tommy Oliver, right? And then he's like, yes. He says, have you seen JJ? And then he's like, no, last time I basically spoke with him was the last time that he said he was going to work or this and that, and then he would come visit us a little bit later. Anara basically says that he quit SPD like about a week ago, right? This is around the same time frame that that Tommy was speaking to his son. All right, so Tommy's like, what? How come no one told me? He didn't tell me anything like that. So he gets very suspicious of SPD at this point, right? So he goes to investigate, but he also calls Kat, right, his wife, and lets her know the situation. She's basically like, keep it cool. And he automatically thinks she's going to try to stop him. But then she's like, no, do everything in your power to get our son back. But just be careful, right? So he goes to SPD headquarters, and Sky is there. Sky used to be the Blue Ranger back in SPD. And he's now, I would say the commander or the Red Ranger. I want to say he's the commander. Maybe I'm misleading that a little bit. But go read the comic book because it's really good. So he's basically like, what happened, da-da-da. Tommy's flipping out on him. And the reason why he's flipping out on him is because they didn't know that he was missing. They know that he quit SPD, supposedly, but they didn't know that he was missing. So Tommy goes off on his own, and he goes with Anara. And the two kind of make a little team up, right? Anara she's part of SPD. She's a cadet. She doesn't have any morphin abilities or anything like that. But she goes to a local bar so that Tommy could get more information on where he could possibly be. Because Anara said that one of the things that JJ really focused on is gang elevation, right? So the more gangs there are, he's trying to investigate, how to basically bring them down, right? So Tommy goes into the bar, he's asking questions. So to the waiter or to the bartender, he basically says like, can you tell me the person's name that I'm looking for? And he sends her some money, right? Because he wants to know if some of the people over there in the corner are them, right? So she, the bartender, instead of taking the money and then finding out, she goes over to them and said, this guy is basically looking for X, Y, and Z. So they come up to Tommy and he's like, I don't want any problems. I don't want any problems. He said, I just want to find out X, Y, and Z. I'm looking for someone. And that's about it, right? So they get into this brawl and they basically try to take Tommy. Tommy does have his master morpher on him, but remember, it is damaged in the sense that you can't really do that much with it, right? But he can morph, right? So they have him pinned down and he has no choice but to morph, right? So he morphs. The first morph that he goes into is the Dino Thunder, right? Which is the one that I don't like really the most, and that could be because I didn't grow up with that. I was a little bit too old at that point watching Power Rangers. I was doing other things. Not that I couldn't watch Power Rangers, just that work life took over, right? So he fights them off, he destroys them, and then he goes out the bar, but he starts to demorph, right? He demorphs, but without giving the morpher the signal that I want to demorph. So he explains to Anara that it's messed up, and then she kind of has familiarity, right? Or just familiar knowledge about the morphers because her father, which is unknown, they never mention his name, used to work on morphers and things of that nature. He wanted to be a Power Ranger but never got a chance to, but he knows quite a bit and he passed on some of that knowledge on to her. So she's basically like, you're morphing, but every time you morph it damages, right? One of the coins or one of the crystals, right? Depending on what's going on. And then he's also like, well, I don't have the ability to transform into the Ranger that I want to at the point because he uses the different modes of Power Ranger transformations in order to gain certain abilities, right? So basically, he can't really he can't go into, I would say, any kind of Power Ranger he wants to at any point in time, right? So anyway, he goes to investigate a little bit farther with Anara, and then they come to this kind of like this area. I don't know what to call it, right? It's just kind of like back alley, kind of where villainous activity goes on, and then he comes to see one of the villains, and it's just kind of like some gangsters. They don't really name them or anything like that, right? And they're basically saying like, they're having an exchange of conversation about powers and like, if you do this, you could, well, let's test out this ability, right? So come to find out, JJ's there. JJ is there, and he breaks one of the green crystals in his hands, and he transforms into kind of like a crystallized version of a Green Ranger. So Tommy is there watching, and Anara is watching, and they're like, you know, let's go get him, let's go save him, basically. And they attempt to do that, right? While that's happening, JJ's also fighting Anara and Tommy too, and but in his head, you can see from the panels that he's basically saying like, why are they here? Like, you know, what are they doing here? Basically. But he goes off to fight them, things of that nature. And Tommy's fighting them off. He's morphing. He morphs off into the Turbo Ranger, right? And he's fighting them off, and then they get into the battle, and then Tommy again gets pinned down, and JJ hesitates to do something, right? Which leads them to believe, and Tommy comes to the conclusion that he's doing this on his own accord. He's not being controlled like I was back when I was a Green Ranger. He's not being controlled. There's no spell or anything like that, right? Anyway, they talk it over. Basically, JJ leaves the scene, and then there's kind of like a big, the area starts to crumble down, right? Tommy does save Anara, and then they come to the point where they're talking it out, and they're wondering what's their next move. So their next move is to go to Finster. Now, if you don't know who Finster is the, I would say he was kind of like, not the right-hand man or the right-hand monster, but he created all of the monsters for Rita Repulsa back in the day, and he used to use the clay to sculpt and go through that process, right? So he goes to him, right? And you might be wondering, but isn't he a bad guy? So many years ago, there was a Zordon wave, and the Zordon wave basically was used to cleanse and purify evil beings or things of that nature, right? I think there's a lot more into that, but I'm just reading into the panels and then making my conclusion from that. And Tommy goes over to Finster, and he's like, I'm so glad to see you. How's everything doing? And then Finster reciprocates and say, I'm so glad to see you too. And that's when they kind of acknowledge the part, like, everything has been good since I've been purified, right? I haven't done any evil deeds, anything like that, and I've been using my sculpting to just sculpt. His house is just basically has a lot of sculptures. So one of the things that Tommy and Anara picked up is one of the crystals that JJ had used to morph into that crystallized version of a ranger, right? Finster basically says that it has evil components to it, that it's basically binded, right? It's something very similar to what they've seen when Tommy was the Green Ranger back in the day, and it was infused with evil magical properties. So they automatically think Rita's back, right? So basically, Finster gives them kind of like a cubicle, a kind of a cubicle thingamajiggy. I don't know what to call it, but it wards off different spells, right? He gives it to Tommy, and Tommy's just very gracious, and he said, I'm just really glad to see that you're okay, right? So from that, it was kind of cool because, you've seen Finster. He used to be a bad guy, but he's a good guy, and that dialogue between them two, it just kind of showed that they've been through a lot, but at the same time, they come to the conclusion that, it's all about peace and harmony, not really about war, right? So they track down kind of the energy properties, because Finster helped them to do that, to link some of the energy properties from the crystal to another crystal that JJ might have. So they locate that area, and they see they see JJ again, and they're basically saying to him like, what are you doing? Stop, blah, 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 blah. And they're trying to fight him off again and try to and then JJ's like, basically he's like, what the hell? He said, I've been undercover the whole time. Of course. And then Nara's like, ah. So she tells Tommy that he's been undercover, and now his cover is blown, obviously, right? So come to find out, then we see kind of like the silhouette figure, right? And it looks exactly like Rita. Kind of down to like the mouth area, and then there's a staff, right? We're like, oh, this is Rita. Rita's back. Somehow, some way, she's back. Even though she was supposed to be purified or something like that, right? So come to find out, it is not Rita. It is Scorpina. Now, if you don't know who Scorpina is, she is one of those characters that you have always seen in the opening promos for Power Rangers that kind of represented a scorpion, like female figure. And she was I always thought she was like the wife of Goldar or something like that, because she had gold armor on. But anyway, come to find out that she has a really interesting story, right? But it's Scorpina. Anyway, it's Scorpina, and she's like, no, this is definitely not Rita. I'm more powerful than she's ever been, blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I think she may be, but not really, right? She's just probably like just speaking boldly, and I'm just reading into the panels. And basically, she whisked away JJ, and she's apparently going to use him as a sacrifice for Lord Talon, I think it is. Now, I'm laughing again because they really are bringing back characters that you never thought would come back. Now, Lord Talon, I think I'm saying his name right? He's basically, I don't know, he's kind of like an evil being from another universe. And the first time I've seen him, he had like, kind of like white, I would say makeup, right, in terms of the character design, and like really spiky hair. And every time you saw him, it was just a silhouette of like a big face in the sky, right? A picture is there so that you can see who exactly I'm talking about, because I don't think I'm describing it really well, right? So if you watch the first Power Rangers, you know who I'm talking about now, but you didn't see the Rangers like face off against him or something like that. He's just being from another universe. So basically, Scorpina is going to promised him that she would sacrifice the son of Tommy Oliver in order to gain more powers, right? That's Scorpina right now. She just wants to gain more powers. And the reason why we didn't see her anymore in the original Power Rangers, and they kind of alluded to this side story, which is pretty cool, is that she wanted more power. And one day she went into, I guess, to the vault of Rita and wanted to read one of her dark magical books, right, to gain more power. But it was all set up by Goldar and Rita. And they basically banished her to the same realm that Lord Talon is. I keep saying Talon, but I think I'm saying it wrong. But anyway, to him. And basically during that time frame, time works differently, right? Decades have gone by, but in their realm, it doesn't really seem like that. So basically, the purification, the Zordon wave purified a lot of evil beings and things of that nature, and it didn't affect Scorpina and Lord Talon. What actually happened is that it didn't phase them at all. But since so many beings were cleansed, and then there was a time of peace, Lord Talon basically sent her as a proxy in order to do X, Y, and Z, meaning do bad deeds, gain more power, so that he could transfer over to, their dimension, but also, more importantly, so he could use the son of Tommy Oliver as a tribute, so that Scorpina could gain more power, right? And it kind of proves that she's able to do the things that he wants her to do, right? So from that, they basically track him down, but Scorpina's like, so you just came here by yourself? Did you really think that you coming here by yourself was going to be what it takes to save him? And he comes as the White Ranger, so she's basically saying, like, do you think that you're just a white knight in shining armor who's going to come to save this boy? Tommy's like, no. He said, I didn't come alone. So behind him, you see red SPD, you see Sky, SPD Ranger. You do see Kat. She's not morphed or anything like that, but she got it. She got the guns on her, right? And you also see some other Rangers and like 5th Ranger people, right? Kind of like the robot from something. I don't even know. Some of the characters I don't really know, but they're here to help, right? So they go off against Scorpina. They're beating some of the thugs and things of that nature. And Scorpina is at this point where she's getting really frustrated. She feels like she's losing. And Lord Talon comes, and then you could hear him talking in the background, right? And she's like, I have to rush to do this because the sacrifice needs to be made in order to prove my worth so that I could gain more power. Scorpina takes out a couple of those crystals, different color crystals, and she breaks all those crystals, and all of that power goes into her, and then she kind of, not morphs, I want to say, but we're going to use the word morph. She morphs into a scorpion type of like big husky being, but still 2 legs, bipedal, and things of that nature. So they're going off against her, and she grabs JJ, right? And Anara is talking to Tommy, and she's like, you're the only one who could save him, basically, like that. And then she's saying, like, you only have one more morph left, right? And of course, we know that's the Green Ranger, his first Ranger form, right? So I think, right, reading the book that he's about to morph, he's about to get his son back. He throws the Master Morpher over to JJ, and this scene was epic, right? Because I didn't think it was going to happen. JJ morphs into the Green Ranger, you know, basically his morphin time, and then he busts out of the grasp of Scorpina, and he's annihilating all of the thugs and also Scorpina as well. And they're basically looking at him, and Nara's like, basically like, you're a pro at this, but this is the first time he's morphing. But you know, of course, he had a good role model. So then he gets to the point where Lord Talon comes out and then basically whisks Scorpina away, right? Doesn't kill her, but he basically takes her away, and they basically reminisce on the things that they've done so far, and they come together as a family. Even Nara does, and they're basically like, you know, they care for each other at the end of the day, right? So, skipping the scene, right? And you see Anara and JJ basically on a boat, and then you see JJ basically morph, right, into a new kind of Green Ranger, right? It's an SPD kind of like Green Ranger. So it's just really cool to see that JJ is now a Green Ranger. Anara is not a Power Ranger yet, but I think she's still a cadet, but I think she's gonna get there, right? I just really love this comic book, and the reason why, or this graphic novel, the reason why is because someone growing up on Power Rangers, to see Kat, Tommy, Finster, Scorpina, Lord Talon, some of those characters like aged up, right? Especially Tommy and Kat. It's just very nostalgic, right? To see those characters, how they've grown up, and it just makes sense, right? In terms of like them getting together, them having a son. And everything just seems to be not perfect, but at the same time, it just seems to make a lot of sense, right, in this comic book. So anyway, my encouragement is that even if you're hearing me giving you a whole entire summary about the story, to go out there and read it and support the Power Ranger comic books, because they're coming out with some really good material. That story came out quite a bit ago, but I just happened to have it on my Comixology account, and I had bought it way back, but then work got in the way. I kind of forgot about it. Then I checked it out today, and I was like, wow, I definitely got to do a video on this. So as you can hear from my hype and just excitement, I want you all to go read it so that more comics can come out of this nature, right? So anyway, this is Zen Manga. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll catch you all later. Make sure to give me a like, a subscribe if you're enjoying this kind of content. All right, everyone, take care. Peace.